50 years ago in 1972, a bunch of like-minded enthusiasts joined forces with the aim of saving their beloved local canals from dereliction and ultimately permanent closure. From Seoul Junction here in the west to Inglesham in the east, this is the story of how half a century of grueling work, crazy ambition and dogged determination now sees this 36-mile stretch of inland waterway making a return to its former glories. This is the story of the incredible persistence, patience and passion of the Cotswold Canals Trust.
These historical canals had once linked the mighty Severn and Thames rivers, providing an invaluable cross-country route through the Cotswolds that avoided the lengthy transportation of cargo around the south coast of England. By the mid-19th century, Britain's canals stretched a staggering 3,000-mile network. Yet no sooner was the network completed that the new speedy railway smashed the canal's profitability. Canals could never compete with rail efficiency, and eventually by the 1950s, a struggling post-war economy led to a policy of abandonment. Every effort was made by the government to shut the whole canal network down, but not without opposition. Luckily, some people believed canals still had purpose beyond their industrial heritage. One such person was Enid Airy.
What is it, do you think, about Britain's canals network that your mother, that drew such interest and such passion from your mother?
She was a preservationist, is that right?
Okay, yeah.
And I don't honestly know how she first became connected with the canal, but it was something which absorbed her. To use her expression, she worked tooth and nail to try and save it, particularly the basin behind us.
Yes.
Stride Basin.
Right.
And she was, I would say, almost obsessed with this. So I'm thrilled to come here today and see the little plaque, which gives credence to all her hard work.
And important to acknowledge then, and the plaque is testament to this, that a lot of what we have here is part of her legacy.
Yes, it is indeed. And it goes on, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
And yes, and I think I'd love to pay tribute to all the people who, over many years, have worked hard. A lot of the volunteers, getting down to the muddy work and achieving wonderful results, which we see now.
Each one of them in their own way following in your mother's footsteps, really.
Yes, yes.
These valiant individuals could do little without government backing, and thankfully, by 1965, Barbara Castle, a cabinet minister in Harold Wilson's Labour government and herself a canal enthusiast, became Minister for Transport. She passed the 1968 Transport Act and convinced the nation that canals must live on. Larger canals to be used for continued transportation, and smaller canals to be used as cruiseways for leisure and tourism. A new age for canals was looming, and now the time had come for organised volunteer groups to step up to the challenge.
Now, along my canal stroll today, I'm very happy to say I've been joined by Michael and Beryl Ayland. And as I see it, you guys are the reason that there is now this monster of a charity that exists.
I'm very pleased with that, but it didn't quite happen by design.
Tell me about how this whole thing came about.
Well, there was no eureka moment. We didn't wake up one morning and say, today we should restore the Stroudwater navigation. It didn't happen like that. I was at school in Stroud in the 1950s, and the Stroudwater Canal was at the bottom of the ground. And as a teenage schoolboy, I couldn't have cared less. But the canal was completely intact at that point in time. All the locks were there, all the bridges were sound. The lock gates had all fallen to pieces, but the canal was complete. But by 1972, we were invited to go on a canal holiday from Rugby to Oxford. So come on, let's go and have a look at the Stroud Water. And desperation. Whitminster Lock had gone, it had vanished. And worse than that, bridges had been lowered and they were actually filling the canal in as we saw. Now, by this time, we'd gained enough information that everywhere else, canals were being restored. Navan, Wayne Arran, Mullenbreck, everywhere, canals were being restored. But here in Stroud...
It was the opposite.
We were filling it in.
And he's moaning and groaning. And I said, either shut up or put up.
Oh, powerful talk.
Yeah. But what could you do? You know, we were totally inexperienced. And really, I did nothing. But some lunchtimes, I shared with a reporter of the Bristol Evening Post.
Okay.
And on that particular day, I said, have you seen the Stroud Water? This is vandalism. They're filling it in, and really you could open it. A couple of weeks, a few weekends, bit of 4x2, you get it open. Anyway, the very next day, the guy came into the office and dropped a newspaper on my desk. And it said, plans to reopen Stroud Water navigation. Mike Ayland says, no, I didn't. But that night, I suppose we had 4 or 5 phone calls.
Oh, at least.
From people saying, what a good idea. We were thinking about this for years. Why don't we do something about it? Very soon, we had very professional advice and good counsel from the Inland Waterways Association in Bristol. And they said, well, really, to test the water, you need a public meeting, see if anybody turns up. Okay. And I booked the subscription rooms in Stroud for a small room. Yeah. There's going to be 20 or 30 of us sort of thing.
Okay.
And we had in excess of 300 people that night. Wow. From that moment on, people started saying, what are you going to do about Brimscombe? How are you going to get through the tunnel? Hang on, we were talking Stroud to... And it was evident that people were interested in the complete link from the Severn to the Thames.
36-mile stretch.
Yeah.
The damage to the historic 36-mile stretch of canals was almost complete and would require an incredibly ambitious restoration programme that to many may have seemed like total insanity. Yet volunteers were signing up in their droves, and the enthusiasm for mucking in was contagious. Since 1972, Cotswold Canals charity volunteers have clocked a staggering 20 million collective hours, repairing heritage locks, reclaiming landfills, rebuilding bridges, dredging canal beds and clearing towpaths, creating nature reserves, eternally fundraising.
John, Waymore Bridge behind us here now. How do you feel standing here in front of this bridge that you have had quite a bit of involvement with?
Hugely proud, I guess.
Yeah, good.
Because it's something that's going to be there for years and years and years, long after I've gone, hopefully.
And you're pleased with the final result?
Yes, I think we were very sceptical when we started that we could pull it off. It's the first time the Trust has built a bridge from scratch. It's the first brick bridge that we've built anywhere, and there it is. It's standing there in all its glory after nearly 10 years of planning and sweat and tears.
And that's how much work needs to go into an infrastructure project like this.
Yes, we've had a lot of planning to get sorted out at the start of the project. We had to get planning permission, not surprisingly. That took a while. We've had to deal with some landowner objections, and then funding. Got the funding to do it from a benefactor who kindly put up all the funds to pay for the project, and then it's get the volunteers, get the bridge built. Is
this built entirely by volunteers?
Yes, entirely, with the exception of the tarmac on the road surface. Everything else was done by volunteers.
That's fantastic. Just out of interest, John, how much does a bridge like this cost to build?
Well, it depends if it's volunteers or if it's done by contractors.
OK, well, let's compare the two.
For us, it was done entirely by volunteers, as I've said. It was about £120,000, which was predominantly materials and rental of some plant and equipment.
OK.
If it was done by contractors, it would probably be 4 times that much. So we're talking probably in excess of £500,000.
Wow.
If it wasn't for doing volunteer projects like that, we just couldn't afford to restore the canal. Yeah, we just wouldn't be able to raise the funds.
To restore 36 miles of canals is an extremely expensive endeavour that requires constant fundraising from all manner of different sources.
Stepping briefly aside from the bricks and bridges of the canal itself, I've come here to the charity's main regular revenue generator. This is the Cotswold Canals Trust book and music shop. And let me tell you, there's more to it than initially meets the eye. I mean, this place is a real treasure trove.
Additional to the bookshop are all the volunteer-run visitor centres and leisure cruises lending their precious time to further raise funds for the Trust.
Now, Polly, I understand you live on a boat on these waters here.
I do, about a mile and a bit that way. I've got a 57-foot coalcraft. I live on with my husband and my dog.
And how long have you lived on a boat?
In total, 6.5 years now.
So what is the role of the trading arm within the context of the Trust as a whole?
The trading arm, like most charities, has to have a trading company. So the trading company oversees the visitor centres, our bookshop, our boat trips, our log sales. We sell benches, we sell bollards, we sell bricks. It's all the bees. And it's everything that raises money for the Trust in order to progress the restoration, and also general day-to-day running costs as well.
Is the trading arm part of the community you were talking about earlier, the boating community, and the community of the public around here as a whole?
We do. We've built it up as almost like a hub for people. So we have a lot of boaters come, obviously use the boaters' facilities, they buy boating stuff. We have people that walk their dogs regularly, because we supply dog biscuits. The dogs whip in, know they get a biscuit. That brings the people in, and then they look around. Without members of the public coming in and buying stuff, there's no point being here. As hard as the volunteers can work, we still rely on the public support, and through COVID, that has been incredible. We have had an incredible amount of new people visit.
So I can tell you that there is a passion that you have for...
Can you really?
Yeah, there is, Polly, there is. So what is it for you personally that drives that interest and that passion and this goal to keep being involved and to keep doing everything that you can?
So for me, it's the passion of meeting new people, making people aware of what we're doing, what they can do to help, but also still that drive of everybody that gets involved in the Cotswold Canal, just family, if you want, is there because they want that canal open, they want that heritage preserved, they want that architecture preserved. I love being here. This is almost my second home, because I just love the people, the views, everything.
Further along the canal, I got the chance to enjoy one of the many cruises run by the Trust and talk with one super chilled volunteer, Ian Nye.
I mean, this is, as I understand it, this is a bit of a revenue generator for the Trust.
It used to be a very major, well, it still is.
And not just this, the fleet of passenger boats.
But it's also to be in the public eye, for people to see boats moving is a good thing.
Yes.
As a narrowboater, I'm a great believer that if you don't move the boats on a canal, they soon fill up. They're full of silt. And
was it something about bringing life to the canal as well, having boats moving on it? I mean, that's ultimately what they're here for.
Yeah, well, this is very much to join the Salt Junction up to the Thames. These phases of development gain a lot of support from the local communities, and the parishes support what we're doing because it's tourism.
Yeah.
The towpaths, people cycle, people even canoe to work. It's incredible. The use of this canal it surprises me sometimes.
But that's entirely what this whole project is about, isn't it? It was about maintaining life on the canals, and it may have morphed significantly from what they were originally designed and built for, which was all about industry, and now it's leisure and it's.
Well, that's the same with all canals. Canals were they were the old motorways of the 17th, 1800s.
Yeah.
They either filled them in the 60s and 50s and 60s and put railway lines over them and such like, which is one of the engineering issues we've got now, sorting out. And really, it's all to do with tourism now.
The charity's work has long passed the point of no return. And what's been found is that the further the restoration has gone on this arduous journey, the more accomplished the volunteers have become. And hence, the faster the work is being completed.
So here we are, we're right down in amongst some of the action here, aren't we? So yeah. What is happening with this lock?
Okay, so this is one of 5 heritage locks that form a flight that drop down the valley here. And we're restoring this particular lock in sequence with the other locks, but not necessarily in a linear sequence. It's as the opportunity arises. So by restoration, that's repairing a lot of the brickwork, the stonework, getting it ready to fit lock gates, because this hasn't had lock gates for about 70 years. Also, we're cutting in recesses for lock ladders, because these locks were built 240 odd years ago without ladders. If people fell in, they just had to fend for themselves. So we are trying to bring it up to the modern standard, but also keeping the heritage feel of the lock.
Is all this work being done by volunteers?
Yes, a lot of the work is done by volunteers, taking out, replacing old bricks and trying to keep as much of the old stuff as possible, taking out the old mortar and replacing it with traditional lime mortar.
So how much time do you volunteer, Bridget?
I come down every Thursday.
And what kind of jobs might you be involved in?
Well, I've mainly been involved in rebuilding the towpath, which of course was used by people bow hauling before the horses came along.
Yeah.
So it was all done by men pulling the trows from the Severn all the way through these locks, which we're now restoring.
Do you get quite a lot out of that work that you put in to restore these
Yes,
towpaths?
I certainly do. Get a lot of job satisfaction, made a lot of friends.
Yeah.
And also it's really rewarding when people who now use the towpath more than they did, they get exercise. It's a flat towpath, it's not puddly, it's not uneven, and we get people with their prams or their wheelchairs, so it's available for everyone to use.
We've restored something like 11 kilometres so far to this multi-user trail standard, and it's arguably the most used public footpath in Stroud District.
Fantastic.
Whilst the early days of the charity proved very slow, its successes have continued to multiply, and the restoration plan is gaining impressive momentum. A big turning point for completing major engineering projects was the advent of the National Lottery Heritage Fund in 1994. Crucially, the canal regeneration has now attracted tens of millions of pounds in investment. Major players like National Highways and National Lottery have invested in some of the seemingly impassable hurdles, such as the award-winning A38 roundabout and the major works to the Ocean Railway Bridge, completed in the winter of 2021. There are still many phases to be completed, and many more years of hard work ahead, but time has never been an issue for the selfless volunteers and trustees.
Reg, can you tell me a little bit about how you came to be a volunteer here for Canals?
I was walking along just a few miles away from here at Hamnhill. Big sign outside, we need your help. And I went in, and the rest, as I say, is history. Here we are 8 years later.
So you now kind of head up the Western Depot here?
I do, yes.
So
my sins.
what goes on here? What's the activity that happens here?
The sort of things we do here could be anything from replacing a light bulb in one of the offices. It could be digging a trench. It could be repairing a lock, rebuilding a lock. We've even built 2 brand new boats here. We've rebuilt, I think it's 3 boats here. So you can see it's really, really varied, and there is no limit to what we can attempt to do.
So then you've got a whole host of different skills
we have
available to you.
Yes, but just behind me there's our weld shop. So we've got people who are qualified in welding and fabricating steels. And another one just to my right and behind is machine shop. We've got machines in there, and we've got lathes and things like that, all of which are highly skilled jobs.
Yeah.
But equally we have the need for people to drive. So we have 5 vehicles here. 3 of them are 4-wheel drive. One is a tipper, and one has got a hydraulic boom on it. We have a constant need for those. As you see, there's none of those vehicles around here today because they all go out to various places. So we've got a mini digger that you need to be trained on. It's
so much.
It is so much. It's great fun.
Who are the kind of people who come and volunteer their time for you here?
Basically, they're nice people. And we have a real laugh here. We have great satisfaction in getting a job done and get a job done well.
Yeah.
We all have the same aim. We want that canal to be open from Severn to the Thames.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think I'll see all of it done in my lifetime, but we will see a lot more than when I joined. And it's all down to volunteers. Every one of us is a volunteer, and that's the brilliant thing about this organisation.
Well, I think what you're doing here is absolutely fantastic, Reg, and I can tell by the way you talk about it, it's something that's quite close to your heart.
It is, and if you're looking for a job, we can fit you in a tree.
Oh, please. I love it here. I love the look of what you've got going on here. But despite this being a restored section of canal, you can see there's always work to be done. Introducing Augustus Kloop, one of the Trust's 10 working boats, which is out here today dredging, and that's part of the continuous maintenance that even when the canal is done, it just goes to show there's always jobs. The beauty about this is the silt that's brought up from the bottom of the canal has a value that will be sold and will bring money back into the Trust, helping even more of it be restored. And it's great to see it in action.
These days, upwards of 200,000 holidaymakers navigate Britain's canals every year. An unthinkable concept back in the 1950s. This transformation is proving to be a new lifeline for local communities. And not just economically. Britain's canal revival is having a positive impact on environmental regeneration too.
Can you tell me about the significance and how broad the environmental concerns are in the restoration of a canal like this?
Okay. Perversely, when the canal fell into disrepair and disuse, its wildlife and ecological biodiversity value increased greatly. The section we're on now, which is the first section to be restored, 1A, is quite constrained because it runs through the centre of Stroud, so there's not much space. So as a blue-green corridor, some 6-7 miles stretching through the centre, it's really important as a wildlife corridor and for biodiversity. So on 1A, the main effort is in maintenance and undertaking that maintenance and management in a way which is going to benefit the wildlife, enhance the biodiversity, and to make sure that it's being done in line with the legislation, because we have so many protected species who either are in or adjacent to the canal.
It's like what? Give me some examples of those species that you are needing to protect, and some of the means by which you do that.
Okay, so for instance, part of the river Froome and the canal interchange, so we have spawning fish in the canal moving from the river which are protected, so we have to make sure we're not doing works in those areas during the spawning season.
Okay.
Obviously we have a wide variety of waterfowl. We've got swans, ducks, mallard, coot, moorhens, all nesting on or adjacent to the water. So again, we've got to make sure that we avoid bird nesting season for a lot of the maintenance work.
Yeah.
We have otter, kingfisher, dippers, just a whole range.
It's amazing.
Really so valued as a wildlife corridor by the local people and the visitors. So what I try and do is make sure that the volunteers and their team leaders are aware of when there are seasonal constraints to the work they can do, so that they're not doing works to the canal verges when birds might be nesting there, or they are at least checking for nesting birds first.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that the work we do over time enhances the biodiversity and the value of the canal and the canal banks.
There are huge benefits through the restoration to the local ecology.
And we have to strike that balance between the biodiversity objectives and the environmental objectives, and the fact that the main purpose of this is to have a canal that's navigable again. The next phase, where we're restoring to connect to the national network, there is a considerable amount of biodiversity gain built into that. So for instance, we're going away from these traditional steep sides of the canal to 45-degree sides, which will allow much more aquatic habitat than we have here.
Yeah. And that's being purposely designed into that restoration.
Yeah. Volunteers are the lifeblood. The future successes of the Cotswold Canals charity depend entirely on its army of volunteers. Without them, none of the vital restoration work and constant general maintenance required to keep the canals navigable could be possible.
What was it drew you to come and volunteer your time for Cotswold Canals Trust? Have you got an interest in canals?
I have to say the wildlife aspect probably grasped me slightly more. Quite into like the environmental kind of conservation side of things. Have some family connections that are actually quite involved in the trust, so they were the ones that actually kind of brought it to light for me in terms of like this is something you could do with your time, and I was like, yeah, sounds great, sign me up.
What is it that you do for the Trust?
Trying to, I guess, get the message out to perhaps a slightly younger audience than has been targeted before. So mainly things like social media, sort of auditing the website, so having a look at how the website functions and how we might be able to get people through that channel. A lot of digital marketing versus, I guess, more like traditional marketing methods that you might sort of already see from the Trust. What's the response been to the kind of work and activity that you are now doing on social media? It's been quite positive, actually. Followings have all gone up. Instagram, I think, was the one we were focusing on the most. The Twitter following was already quite strong. Okay. But Instagram, sort of looking to push the message out further there, sort of more frequent posting, more sort of like Instagram stories and like the newer features that you can access, or like more recent features you can access. So yeah, it's been really good.
The Cotswold Canals charity clocks 50 years of restoration work. And as it celebrates, it looks back with a sense of fulfilment at its extraordinary achievements. All this hard work, commitment, and perseverance is completely justified when we know that the result will pump life into the whole community for many generations to come.
Having met the original chair of the organisation, it feels very right that I should also meet the current chair of trustees. But it's actually your other role I'm quite interested in today, Jim, which is
engineering director.
Engineering director.
Yeah, that's what I started as before I became I became chair.
Because your background is in?
My background is aircraft and engineering. My speciality as an ergonomist is man-machine interface. In other words, anything a person uses in order to drive a machine.
And here we are today at this ground paddle.
Exactly the point. When I got involved, someone said, we've been trying hard to find someone to design paddle gear. They've had 3 goes at trying to buy it in, and because this is an historic canal with a conservation officer, conservation officer kept on saying no. So they said they want someone who can design something that looks like it was in 1900.
So that brief then fell to you then?
That was the brief that I then picked up. So
and this is what you've created?
Yeah, so I had a few odd photographs, right? But the other question, of course, is that this is now being operated by today's person, not burly boatmen with lots of muscles. This is going to be operated by women and children, and therefore their amount of be able to turn, the torque they're able to develop is much, much lower. And so it had to be brought up into today's modern standards.
How is it for you, having designed all this, to see them actually in place and part of the opening up of the canals? And as you've designed them, people are using them in their leisure craft.
Now I've seen them work, a lot easier. There's always that worry, is it going to work? Is a human going to be able to operate it? So yes, it's a challenge, but it's interesting. And now we're doing the second batch because we've already done 8 locks, and so we know what we're doing. And so it's a repeat order.
And so what about the prospect then, Jim, of having many more of your mechanisms dotted up and down this 36-mile stretch?
Bring it on.
Yeah? I'll tell you what, Jim, you're going to have your hands full for a while, aren't you? Yeah. But what I do look forward to is to coming back and seeing many more of these.
Yes, you will.
In more locations along your canals.
You will indeed. Certainly that way in the first instance, but eventually that way.
Further east, phases 2 and 3 of the restoration work is underway.
Looking into the future, and who knows how far into the future, but the completion of the whole stretch, do you feel that will be dependent on these partnerships, and some strong partnerships and some strong specific projects to get that accomplished?
One project that we're really hopeful might come to fruition is the one that the water industry in the southeast is looking into.
The southeast of England?
Southeast of England, yeah, which is solving the water shortages as London and the southeast becomes more and more in need of water. They're looking at ways of transporting water from the west and the northwest of the UK down to the southeast, and there are different options. But one that's being looked at is transporting water from the River Severn to the River Thames. And what we're trying to do is to convince that the water industry that a canal that we're halfway through restoring is the best way to do that, rather than putting in an expensive new pipeline.
How much of a game changer would that be for the Trust?
Well, it would be fantastic, because on this side of the Cotswold Escarpment, The canal is historically and is going to be permanently short of water. This is a way of having more water than we could ever dream of having coming down the canal on a constant basis. And it would fund the restoration of significant sections of the canal as well, because they need the channel, like you mentioned behind us, still needs to be dug out and restored. A water transfer scheme would fund the doing of that.
You know, having seen and actually experienced on the water some of the restored locks up the western end of the canals, it's quite something to come here and see this, the yet to be restored Siddington flight of locks. It's almost got a kind of ancient ruins feel about it. It's quite beautiful. I think I'm struck by two things, really. Firstly, that's the amount of rich industrial heritage that is locked into this place. And secondly, it's an excitement about what the future holds for this site, that these locks will be restored as well, and that these walls will once again see water and water traffic flowing through them. So what about in the future? Let's say when the entire restoration is complete.
Yeah.
What will the role of the Cotswold Canals Trust be then?
There'll always be a role. It's moving forward. It's once that canal's finished, there's restoration, there's maintenance to be done. I mean, it's like building a house. Once it's built, you've got to maintain it. It's the same with the canal. So it'll be generations moving forward. There'll always be a future because it's a continuous thing.
It started off in a relatively small way. We've still got a fair way to go in getting the job done. We will get the job done. There's absolutely no doubt about that at all. But you need the new blood coming in. And if we get 50-year-olds, they're our babies. Because we're all of us a lot older than that.
It's rewarding to see the numbers grow and to see people happy in the roles that they've got to restore the canal. It ain't finished yet. We've got a lot more to do.
We've got to go down there.
So how hopeful are you both that you will see the completion of this?
Whether we should live that long.
Oh, well, let's put it in different terms then.
It will happen, absolutely.
Yeah. Look at that.
Yeah.
Unanimous.
Yeah.
It will happen.
Yeah.
Today we celebrate the Cotswold Canals Trust and of course all of its wonderful volunteers who have given so much and who selflessly keep on giving. And surely these continued efforts are testament to that original plan drawn up 50 years ago that's never really been abandoned. Now, the charity needs new volunteers, new generations of enthusiasts to come and learn new talents, new skills, and keep this magnificent mission on track. And so we humbly salute you, Cotswold Canals Trust, and everything you've achieved to date. And I, for one, am incredibly excited about everything you've yet to achieve into the future. Bravo!